Let's have a look through the papers for you this morning. Last time today with comedian Kate Smurthwaite and writer Benedict Spence. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Kicking off with the Belfast Telegraph, Kate.
Yes, so it's interesting actually that it's not been covered in any of the UK-wide papers, but the Belfast Telegraph picking up quite rightly, I think, on the enormous protests happening right across Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, Dublin, Belfast, Galway and Cork, following on from the rape trial which closed in Belfast a few days ago, in which two rugby players were acquitted of rape. And what's come out of that trial is so many problems with the way that the trial was run. The alleged victim was put on the stand for 7 days, questioned for 7 days. The defendants got about a day of questioning each, and this woman was put through this incredibly arduous process. And we have in Dublin 4,000 protesters outside City Hall with placards saying, "I believe her, I stand with survivors," and of course #MeToo. And I think what is coming out of this is an enormous sense of a wave of feeling that we need to look at the way that rape trials are run. We need to look at the fact that the conviction rate remains, absolutely trivial, in fact, across the UK. And we need to talk about whether jury trials are necessarily the way forward, or whether we need experts to come in, or whether we need specialist juries and all this kind of stuff, because it feels like people are saying we can't put people through this kind of process anymore.
But these men were acquitted.
They were.
So we have to be very careful with this, don't we? I mean, these are innocent men.
Well, these are men who've been found not guilty, absolutely, and therefore they have absolutely... But we've got to remember that this is about finding a small amount of reasonable doubt is what we're looking at. We're not looking at... Do you know what I mean? When people they're found guilty or not guilty, nobody's ever found innocent. If you're accused of something, then they have to prove that you're guilty. The burden of evidence is there. So what we have to be careful of, if somebody's found not guilty, that doesn't mean the accuser is lying. That means there is enough doubt about it that we should treat them as though they were innocent. And that's exactly what's going on.
But that's not how it's viewed legally, is it?
No, it is exactly how it's viewed legally, is that if you cannot be proved to be guilty, you must be treated as though innocent. And that's, but you are innocent in the eyes of the law. You are innocent in the eyes of the law, yeah, but that doesn't mean that nobody's ever done something and
got away with it. No, that's true, but we can't imply that's
and I'm
the case
not.
here.
But what I'm saying is that if you look at the way that this trial has run, there are lots and lots of aspects of it that I think a lot of people are quite reasonably angry about. And, 4,000 people don't show up outside Dublin City Hall, unless they've got something really serious.
Do you agree that the defendant should be named in this instance?
I think we have to name defendants when there's an accusation.
If it took place in Dublin, they wouldn't have been named, would they? They wouldn't have been
That's true. But I think the issue here, and actually we might look at another very recent case that's been in the news a lot recently, which is John Morboys. When John Morboys was accused of rape, the black cab rapist, when he was accused, as soon as his name was announced, loads and loads of other victims came forward. So it's the difficulty, if you don't name the defendants in these cases, is that other victims may not have the opportunity to step forward and go, hang on a minute, I want to be a part of this case and I want to bring this as well. So it's difficult. Of course it's difficult when you've been accused of something you haven't done. Of course that's difficult. But on the other hand, we have to make sure that victims are protected. And one of the ways we protect victims is giving them the opportunity to come forward.
It must be said, I don't necessarily agree when it comes to naming the accused. I don't think we're going to agree on that. But I think there is a point on this that, again, hasn't been covered in any of the national newspapers like this, which is very, very weird. Of course, earlier this week, the Criminal Bar Association announced it wasn't going to be taking on any more cases from the government under the current pay schemes. That is in the light of the fact that over the past few years, the Ministry of Justice has imposed 40% cuts. 40%. If we were talking about that in terms of the NHS or education, that would be scandalous. And this is in terms of upholding the rule of law. Now, just think about that. If you are a rape victim or you've been accused of rape, either way, 40% cuts. You can no longer guarantee the highest standard of justice in this country, and I think that is something people ought to be really concerned about.
Well, we do need to protect our legal system. Benedict, can we have a look at the Mail on Sunday, looking at President Putin?
And on Sunday, this is President Putin in the aftermath of expelling a number of British and other diplomats. I mean, it's getting very sort of tit for tat at the moment with Russia.
Yes.
It must be said, I think it's all very interesting in that we now are talking about Russia quite so much, but we were before the Sergei Skripal poisoning, because this is an outrage. It shouldn't be allowed. You can't get away with poisoning anybody, whether it's in your own country or not. But that's not so much the point. This standoff now with Russia, it seems to be playing into the hands of certain politicians in this country, specifically Gavin Williamson, who does seem to be very, very hawkish when it comes to Russia. He's the one talking always about Russian security forces, about cuts to the armed forces. And I just kind of get the impression that Russia doesn't actually care too much about us. Sergei Skripal he's an individual, and he's undergone very difficult circumstances, for lack of a better phrase, for whatever reason. But actually, in the grand scheme of things, we are ramping up this very heated rhetoric with Russia, when Russia has far bigger issues to be dealing with in China, in the Middle East, and with the United States. And I just wonder, really, this is all very well. We should be responding robustly to a chemical attack or a nerve agent attack on our country, but actually it all feeds into a narrative that I think is getting out of hand and is a bit unnecessary,
Well,
frankly.
we shall no doubt be reflecting on that over the coming weeks as this diplomatic crisis continues. We're going to take a short break. Back with more for you in a couple of minutes.